We are building on the question, science or divine design. Genesis 1 verse 1 to 4. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Some translations say the heavens and the earth, but they practically mean the same thing. The second verse says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. Verse 4 says, and God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. This passage begins with a significant statement. In the beginning. The word beginning is the clue that the first thing that God created out of eternity was time. Because the world, that is the cosmos, requires time and time-space to exist in specific balance in order to execute its created assignments that have been encoded into it. We also see that Earth was created but negatively impacted by an event, not just an event, but a personality and a system that this passage calls darkness. The problem was not that the earth was without form. The problem was not that it was void. The problem was really darkness. You see, as long as darkness exists, it produces an environment of chaos and disorder and seeks to replicate itself in extending that environment. So when God spoke and said, let there be light, he didn't speak to form, he didn't speak to function, he didn't even name what the situation was. He spoke to system and environment. He dealt with system and environment. And God said, let there be light. Light is the system in which and through which all creation, all original creation, and afterward, all God-sponsored forms, functions, and realities manifest. They all happen through light. The book of John, chapter 8, verse 12, and John happens to be one of those people who was close to Jesus when he walked this earth. And theologians say he was one of the closest, if not the closest, to Jesus as a man when he was on the earth. He wrote about Jesus, and his expression is very telling. In chapter 8, verse 12 of his journal, he says, then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, and this is Jesus himself speaking, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. I want you to take note of two things. First, he says, I am the light of the world. Second, he says, he that followeth me. I'll explain why those two words, those two sentences are hugely significant as we go along. Light fixes form. Light fixes form, function, and nature. Light is the creative intelligence. When God said, let there be light, this is what was happening, or this is what happened from that point on. Light came and it fixes form, it fixes function, it establishes nature. Light is the creative intelligence. Darkness is the opposite. It is destructive intelligence, but it is intelligence, no doubt. Darkness is the system in and by which all evil and malevolence exists and operates. It was therefore necessary that light be separated from darkness, because as you read those verses in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 to 3 and then 4, you will see that light was separated from darkness. Why? Because God will eventually conceive, form, and make man. And that man needed to be constituted of, have education of, and operate in, and have command over his domain. by the intelligence of God. So a system of light was needed. And in the context of the reality of that light and the reality of a habitat, a place called Earth, man will be created. And part of his makeup, we're going to see that as we advance along, has to involve light and earth. Are you getting this now? This is hugely mathematical. This is so very well calculated by infinite wisdom. Now, the Spirit of God once told me something really remarkable. He said that everything that we eat, and he was speaking in this instance specifically about food, he said to me, everything that we eat has a specific light energy. And it is because of this different types, or should I say kinds, of light energy, and in their varying amounts, held within different foods, natural foods, that we can obtain nutrition, boost health, and other needed benefits for our bodies and our minds. I do not know if science has discovered what I just shared with you yet, but I think that under a certain mechanism or certain mechanisms, perhaps such a machine exists out there or will be produced in the near future. Observable light can be seen to emanate, to come from true foods. Science is discovery. That was how science was defined for me when I was in elementary school. Science is really presence of mind. Science is observation. It is really the mind being brought to awareness of a pre-existing reality. Every man has the ability to varying degrees to feel, and I think at best is a weak feeling in our natural disposition, to feel, to experience this pre-existing reality. And that ability is called prescience. You see the connection? Science, prescience, science. And finally, we have conscience. So these three exist in a close relationship. We have prescience, we have science, and we have conscience. The Bible accounts in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, that God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament to divide the day from the night." That is, to set the night and the day into an observable and calculable format. And he says, "Let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and for years." So we realize that man did not make any input into the ability of the sun and the moon to make them time markers or for navigation. We simply discovered what was made. We didn't make these things. And over time, we have been able to codify what we have discovered to forms that we can read, calendars, dials, maps, which we could pass on in our attempts at civilization. And there are numerous other things which science claims to have created, which, to be honest, we did not. We simply found them. And we should be sincere, honest, and humble enough to acknowledge that we simply discovered these things. Do you notice how our words have changed? How instead of trust God, people say trust the science. Instead of having the higher logic of faith, we rather gather data and say numbers don't lie. Numbers can be made to lie by the people who tweak those numbers, who interpret those numbers. And isn't it funny how many people who trusted God escaped global issues and crises and pandemics like the COVID-19? And many who trusted the science have found out 5-6 years down the line that the science was really not science at all. And all of this is proven by confessions, by congressional testimony and hearings and whistleblowers out there. There's nothing that I am making up. It's all out there. The data is all out there. The confessions and all of the documents are out there. The thing is, history always proves God right. And we forget that we are mortals and we don't have enough lifespan or sufficient opportunity, infinite opportunity to experiment with every flying folly out there. You would also agree with me that it is hypocritical to believe in what many have called the law of attraction or the law of confession or the law of proclamation, and yet at the same time, in the same breath, claim that there is no God, there cannot be a God, and therefore it is impossible to speak creation into being. Doesn't that amuse you when you think about it? I mean, the illogic of it all. We have been building on the question science or divine design. Once we answer that, we can tackle questions like why are we here? Why do you and I exist? And in the next episode, we will talk a bit more about man's design. Please do subscribe, like, share, drop your thoughts, your comments, your questions, and contributions in the comment section below. I will respond for sure. This is Didache, where we find out what's okay. Let's go.